if I told you that the world was gonna end and you had 15 minutes to spend with me or your friends, would you take the first?
Welcome in to Fantasy 15, a podcast meant to answer all of your fantasy football questions, or as many as I can get to in 15 minutes. I'm your host, Zach Freed, and this week we're talking about top rookie landing spots. The NFL draft is quickly approaching, and today I'm going to be going through some team needs and looking at what places hold the best opportunity for a rookie to come in and make an immediate impact. If you like what you hear today, please subscribe, rate, review, share, follow on Twitter at Fantasy15 or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Fantasy15. Enough of the plugs, let's get into it. Today we're talking about top rookie landing spots. As always, I've only got 15 minutes. We're officially on the clock. Let's start with quarterbacks. Now, these are pretty obvious, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about every single situation. At number 5, I have the Saints. Yes, Drew Brees is locked and loaded to be the starter, but how much longer does he play? He signed a 2-year contract this year with the Saints, but he's also already signed with NBC Sports to go on and be an analyst after he retires. I don't see him playing beyond the 2 years, and it wouldn't be shocking if he played 1 year and retired. The Saints have a great offense. Sean Payton is a great offensive mind. Michael Thomas is arguably the best wide receiver in the league. They, for years now, have had an offense that has been tops in the league. So I think it's a great landing spot for a quarterback to come in. It wouldn't be somebody who would be an immediate play. It's somebody that could be groomed a little bit behind Drew Brees for a year or two and then take over the offense after he left. And there's a pretty good chance I see them retaining Alvin Kamara when his contract goes up as well. At number 4, I have the Patriots. And it's because the last guy worked out pretty well. The Patriots are a legitimate dynasty. Bill Belichick will continue to win. As much as I hate to say it, the guy's going to continue to win games no matter what his weapons are. The offense may look a little rough, but it's a pretty young offense as far as it goes. You have N'Keal Harry, Sony Michel, Damian Harris, all guys that could be big contributors down the road. They continually have great offensive line play in New England, so the protection would probably be pretty good. There's only been a few years where they didn't actually rank in the top 10 over the last 10 to 15 years, so that offensive line has been very consistent. It's kind of questionable where they stand with Stidham, so he seems to be their guy right now, but if they spend a higher pick on a quarterback, I wouldn't be shocked to see that guy get a legitimate chance. Number 3, I have the Bengals, and they're probably going to draft Joe Burrow with the 101. The offensive line is a little rough. They ranked 27th in pass block win rate. They gave up a lot of quarterback pressures, hits, sacks. They only signed one lineman in free agency. That's Xavier Su'a-Filo, who wasn't a consistent starter in Dallas. Over the last 2 years, he only started 11 games. The Bengals do have a quarterback-minded coach in Zach Taylor. They have good enough offensive weapons, though. They re-signed A.J. Green, who gives them a lot of veteran help, and they have Mixon and Boyd. And if John Ross can ever stay healthy, he's a legitimate deep threat every play. They've basically given up on Dalton. They sat him last year so they could kind of tank and secure the number 1 overall pick. So I think if the Bengals draft a quarterback, that quarterback has a very good chance. And I'm dancing around the issue. When they draft Burrow, Burrow's probably going to start week 1. Number 2, I have the Dolphins, and they're an up-and-coming team. I think they're a better situation than the Bengals. They made some big waves in free agency, almost all of them on defense. The defense should be able to keep them in games now. The Dolphins have a ton of draft picks. They don't have an investment in quarterback. Fitzpatrick is 37. He's basically a placeholder. They're not going to have a real quarterback competition with whoever they draft. It's basically that guy's team. It's a very interesting offense. Devontae Parker broke out last year. Preston Williams was having a great year until he got injured. Mike Gesicki is a lot of guys' sleeper pick for a breakout at tight end this year. They're probably going to draft a running back. They're probably going to draft some offensive line help because they have so many draft picks that they've acquired over the last season. The number 1 landing spot for a quarterback, I think, right now is the Chargers. They're a win-now team. They have a great defense. They won't need to go out and win in a shootout. And they're going to have to win with a rookie quarterback because the money that they're going to have to pay their defensive players coming up, they're going to have to do all this if they want to win on a rookie quarterback salary. There's a lot of offensive weapons there. They have 2 above average wide receivers in Keenan Allen, who's very reliable, Mike Williams, who has a great contested catch rate. He's a big play guy. Austin Eckler is a great weapon out of the backfield that takes a lot of checkdowns and makes big plays with them. He makes a quarterback look good. They're most likely to draft a running back too, because I kind of see them as getting a complimentary guy for Eckler. They traded for Trey Turner, a guard who is coming off of 5 Pro Bowls, so they also improved a struggling offensive line. So the Chargers' offense does look pretty good going into next season. And their quarterback right now is slated to be Tyrod Taylor. And the last time he was a starter, he just kind of set the table for Baker Mayfield to take over and have a great rookie year. He's a guy that can easily be beaten out by somebody who has a high draft capital. So I think the Chargers is the best landing spot for a quarterback right now. Let's get into running backs. Last year was an exception. Miles Sanders and Josh Jacobs finished 15 and 18. 4 seasons prior, at least 2 rookie running backs have finished inside the top 12. In 2018, we had Saquon and Lindsey finishing 2 and 12. In 17, Kamara, Hunt, and CMC finished 3, 4, and 11. In 2016, Zeke and Jordan Howard finished 2 and 10. In 2015, Gurley and David Johnson finished 7 and 9. So rookie running backs do have a pretty good chance, a pretty reasonable shot of finishing inside that top 12. And this is a pretty good rookie running back class. They can immediately come in and make some noise. The first kind of landing spot I have is Tampa Bay, is the Buccaneers. They have an ultra powerful offense. They just added Tom Brady this season. He's made a living checking down to running backs and giving a running back the ball out of the backfield. So that could be a great position. And they've never truly seemed to buy in with Ronald Jones. He's constantly being benched for missing blitz pickups, and they don't really trust him. He's not an Arians guy. Bruce Arians didn't draft him, so I don't think he really cares whether or not he plays him. Ronald Jones does have a lot of ability, but he's never really shown it out of the Tampa Bay backfield, so I wouldn't be shocked to see them go out and get a guy. Next on the list is the Dolphins. I've already talked about them, about why Miami is great for a quarterback, and I think the same kind of things apply for a running back. There's no real competition. There's Kalen Ballage, Patrick Laird, Myles Gaskin. They brought in Jordan Howard, but he was not brought in to be an every down guy. Jordan Howard has never in his career been a pass catcher, so at the very least, they'll draft a guy to be a third down back who could eventually take the job over from an aging Jordan Howard. Next on the list is the Eagles, and this maybe is a controversial pick, but they have very limited depth at running back already. Miles Sanders is more of a receiving back. I think he's going to fill more of the Darren Sproles role in the offense. They specifically would be looking for more of a power between the tackles guy like Jordan Howard, J.J., LeGarrette Blount, fill that role. Doug Peterson has always used a running back by committee. The argument against it is, well, they've never spent this kind of draft capital on a running back before. They really paid up for Miles Sanders, but I think they're going to go back to RBBC because of how many injuries they saw last year. They don't want to put a heavy workload on one specific guy. The Eagles have a very consistent offensive line. Their offensive line has been one of the best in recent years in the NFL. Next on the list is the Rams. And they have a recently vacant opening. Todd Gurley was a workhorse until he couldn't handle that workhorse load anymore. So I could see a guy stepping in there and taking over a lion's share of the carries. It doesn't seem like they have a ton of faith in Henderson or Brown. They didn't get the job done once last season when they were limiting Gurley's role. I don't really expect them to be given another opportunity. The offensive line seemed to figure things out a little bit at the end of the year. Because of troubles, they may even need to go out and add a couple more offensive line depth pieces in the draft. They've already made some moves to get themselves some more picks to do that this year. Sean McVay seems to be a great offensive mind. The Rams are 1 year removed from a Super Bowl, so they're an immediate contender. It's a good landing spot for a running back because you could immediately be on a playoff or even Super Bowl contending team. The obvious best landing spot for a running back is the Chiefs, is Kansas City. Yes, Damian Williams is there, but he's had trouble staying healthy, and he's never really performed to fill that Kareem Hunt void that was left. Andy Reid has historically used one guy. We see names like Brian Westbrook, LaShawn McCoy, Jamal Charles, Kareem Hunt. He likes to have a workhorse. There's been other guys mixed in with those, or year in, year out, but that's pretty much the group of guys that he's used. Kansas City is the most high-scoring offense in the NFL. They've got a very high-powered offense, and that's going to lead to a lot of opportunity to score around the goal line. So obviously, Kansas City is the best landing spot for a running back. Next, let's talk about wide receivers. Typically, the breakout for a wide receiver comes closer to the end of year one, mostly into year two. Last year, that wasn't the case. Lots of guys seemed to have a big impact. We had A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, Darius Slayton, Marquise Brown, all impactful first-year wide receivers. And this wide receiver class has a lot of talent as well, so I could see them having a similar output. First up, I had the Jets. Sam Darnold is the future of the Jets. He could be a decent NFL quarterback. It's really hard to tell because you didn't see that year two progression, mostly because of the mono that he suffered at the beginning of last season. He did come on late, but that was when the Jets' schedule got pretty weak. As far as the wide receiver competition goes in New York, it's Jamison Crowder, Brashad Perryman, and that's pretty much it. So a good wide receiver could come in there and have an immediate impact, could take a role. The downside is you're playing for Adam Gase. He's living off of basically being an offensive coordinator for Peyton Manning, which means he didn't really do much because Peyton Manning called his own offense. And we see what Devontae Parker did once Adam Gase left. So who knows how he is going to affect a wide receiver stats. Next up is the Raiders. They have no wide receiver one. They have no possession guy as far as I'm concerned. They do have some bad quarterback play. It's either going to be Derek Carr or Marcus Mariota. I don't think it really matters which one is the quarterback. Neither one is ideal. But Gruden is committed to rebuild. The team could become something in a few years. And you're playing in Las Vegas with all new facilities. So it's a great role for a young wide receiver to come in there and be a pivotal piece of that offense. Next on the list, I had Houston. And they don't have a real possession guy. You look at who their wide receivers are right now. They just traded for Cooks, Will Fuller, Kenny Stills, Randall Cobb. Those are all very similar kind of guys. There's somebody that could come in there and make a living because everyone else is so worried about being beaten deep. So somebody come up underneath and be more of a possession guy could really do a lot of damage in fantasy football. You get Deshaun Watson, who's probably one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, and he just lost a 30% target share guy. So there is a void there. Yes, Brandon Cooks is going to come in and take some of that, but a rookie could come in and take 20%, and I don't think that would be shocking. Bill O'Brien is not somebody that I would want to be on an NFL team with. He had a terrible offseason, and he showed he's a bad GM. But I think the opportunity that's there in Houston kind of outweighs that. Next up is the Broncos. And a wide receiver would have the benefit of playing across from Cortland Sutton, who's going to get a lot of the tough coverage. Drew Lock might be a good quarterback. He only lost one game once he started, so he won games. He found a way to win. They have a new offensive coordinator, Pat Shurmur, who could be good for the offense. The Broncos, I don't know if they're going to be the best passing team because that's not really what they want to do. They want to win with defense and running the ball, but they have a good opening there for somebody to come in and have an immediate impact. Next up is the Eagles, and Alshon Jeffrey can't stay healthy. None of their roster really can either. They definitely need a slot, maybe even a wide receiver too, and there's some upside because Jeffrey can't stay healthy. That wide receiver 2 could turn into a wide receiver 1. Carson Wentz is a pretty great quarterback. They're committed to him for the long term, and so a wide receiver could come in there. They've had multiple guys fail. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside did not seem to get the job done, and they've had other guys come and go. So you're playing with a weak division. Some of the worst defenses in the league, honestly, as far as pass defenses go. The Cowboys were probably the strongest, and they lost their best defender. So I think getting a wide receiver position on the Eagles would be a pretty beneficial spot. The best landing spot, though, for a wide receiver, I think, is the Packers. They have no true wide receiver, too, because who are you worried about? MVS, Funchess, Lazard, Kumaro, none of those guys really scare me. And there's the wide receiver 1 upside, because like Alshon Jeffrey, Devontae Adams has been great, but he's only played a full 16 games twice in his career. Clearly, the MVS experiment didn't really work, so I think somebody could be drafted to step in and take that wide receiver 2 spot. Aaron Rodgers is a good quarterback. It's a stable quarterback position. You know he's probably not going anywhere for at least a few years, and he loves to throw in the red zone. Also, there's the benefit of great running back play. Aaron Jones has made defensives actually worry about the running back position, and so it opens up a lot more in the passing game. Last, we're going to talk about tight ends, and it's really hard to pin down because tight ends usually don't break out until year 3. So I limited my list to teams that I think severely need some tight end play. The first on the list is the Patriots, and this is because there's a giant void left in their offense. They have a history with Rob Gronkowski, and they've been chasing that performance since he left. Clearly, that's a part of the scheme they want to have. They're going to have a new quarterback no matter who it is, and they probably want to have a security blanket for that quarterback. They need someone reliable that he can throw to underneath, and so I see a tight end being able to step in there and having a big impact. Next is the Redskins, and they didn't get anyone in free agency. They wanted Greg Olsen. Haskins needs more weapons. Rivera has used a tight end a lot. He used Greg Olsen in Carolina, so I wouldn't be shocked to see a tight end land there and have a good impact as well. And the last team is the Bears. They have a revolving door at tight end, it seems like. They had Trey Burton, Adam Shaheen. They brought in Jimmy Graham, who is old and got an insane contract. That's part of Matt Nagy's offense. He wants to have that Travis Kelce role. They haven't been able to find anybody to fill it, though. So I think the Bears is probably the best landing spot for a tight end. That's all the time we have today. Thanks for joining me. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe, rate, review, share, follow on Twitter at Fantasy15, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Fantasy15, and submit any questions to fantasy15@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. See you next week.